Welcome to the Property Pod, brought to you by Shared Ownership Week. A huge big thank you to Legal and General Affordable Homes. Now, I'm currently sat in one of their show homes at East River Wharf Apartments, and my guest today is Rupi. Hello, Rupi.
Hello.
Now, you're from Censeo Financial. What is that?
Censeo Financial, basically, we're a mortgage brokerage that specialises in affordable homes, and we've been around for about 16 years, and look after quite a few housing associations and developers in the sector.
Okay. Can we bring it back to the basics? Because I'm a renter, have always rented, interested in getting a property. What is a mortgage essentially, and how do I get one?
Mortgage is a debt against an asset, which is your home, which is a property. And usually you need one if you're buying a property because they're relatively expensive. So you need to go and find someone to lend you the money. Usually it's a bank or another financial institution. And you can go directly to the bank to go and ask them to lend you money. Or you can go to a brokerage firm like ours or others in the market and ask a mortgage broker to help you get a mortgage.
Okay. It sounds quite scary, and the word debt, I think, is what's so scary about it. So can you explain why not all debt is bad debt?
So when you hear the word debt, here's a scary thing. Oh, I'm in debt. And we remember being in debt to credit cards. So things like credit cards, things like car loans, things that you take money from someone else, put it into something that depreciates in value or doesn't give you that utility that it should, is usually bad debt. Good debt, however, you use that money to build on. You buy a home with that money, you go and get a student loan, which is a good debt to get educated, or you borrow money to start a business to increase your wealth. So there are different types of debt. Both need to be managed and need to be sustainable into the long term.
Okay, this is really useful advice. I'm starting to learn about debt is fine if it's managed, and there's essentially a goal as to why you have the debt in the first place. Now, if I want to go and get a mortgage, where do I start?
Start by doing your own research, by using search engines like Google, watching YouTube, TikTok. There's lots of information about mortgages and financial advice on there. But start with that, but you really do need to see a person. It's an emotional purchase, it's a home. It's always better to talk to someone. Go to your parents, go to people you know who've bought a home, ask who they used, and ask a question. Ask who they use, ask if they'd recommend them, and then go and see them.
Interesting that you mentioned emotional purchase, because I definitely feel like this is a story of two halves when it comes to talking about mortgages or buying property. So there's knowing all the important things about the process, but then, it's very personal and it's down to the emotional side. How would you advise someone managing those elements?
So if you're buying a house, it's not very emotional. Buying a building is not very emotional. Buying a home is where you want to live, it's where you feel secure, where you feel safe. So there is a level of emotion there. So talking to people and asking people how to get a mortgage, how to look after your money into mortgage probably helps along with that journey, because there's other questions that you can ask that person. And we've noticed a lot of people go straight onto a computer and try to get a mortgage. It doesn't really work. There's too many variables, too many questions. So having a sounding board, because we get asked a lot of the time, am I doing the right thing? Can I afford it? Because people want to know they can afford that property today and into the future. A computer will usually say yes or no, but a human can actually judge that situation. A professional can judge that situation and make sure that you're safe with that debt, which is very important.
Interesting. A sense of security as such around it. Now, how would I manage myself financially? Is it like a month by month scenario, do you think, or is it more long-term thinking around it?
First and foremost, to get that mortgage, you'll need a deposit and an income. So first you need to find out, is your deposit big enough for that mortgage? And do you have enough income for that mortgage? Because if you're not earning anything and you haven't got any deposits put down, banks probably won't lend you money. So that's the first thing. Make sure that you're mortgage ready and your credit worthiness is there. You haven't missed payments on credit. So get yourself into a situation where you have enough of a deposit, enough of an income, and you haven't got bad credit. That's the first step.
You mentioned credit. Now, what is a credit score? Why do I need a good one? And what makes a bad one?
So a credit score is something, a tool a bank will use to judge whether you're good for them to lend you money, basically.
Okay.
And you can get your credit score, go online and type in credit score, and someone will send you all the information you need and give you a score. The banks will use that quickly to take a look on whether you're worth lending to. And how do you get a bad credit score? Is easy. Don't pay your debts, miss payments, borrow too much, and just mismanage your money. And they will know, because everything's digital now, whether or not you've got a good credit score or not. To get a good credit score, pay your debts, don't go overdrawn too often, and make sure you don't have too much debt in the first place. And that's a good credit score. Bank will use every quantitative method they can find to make sure if they're going to lend you money, they're going to get it back. So
Okay.
hence credit scores are important.
Okay, so treat it like an examination
Yes.
by the bank, essentially. And how far back, record-wise, did they look for a credit score?
If you've got a county court judgment, I think they can go back 6 years. So they can go back as far as they want to, but usually you need a good credit score for 6 months to a year.
Okay. It makes me feel like I'm in trouble if I have a bad credit score, but there's time obviously to fix.
Absolutely. First and foremost, you pull down your credit score, your credit report, and go through it with a professional. Find out where the red flags are, for example, and work out a way to fix it. I.e., you might have missed a mobile phone payment. Some banks will look upon that without any kindness, and some will be, okay, missed a mobile phone payment, everything else is good.
Interesting. So different banks will vary.
Yeah, on their credit scores.
Okay.
But they will judge you and charge you an interest rate accordingly.
Okay, what is an interest rate and why am I now being judged?
So I'm a bank, I'm lending you money.
Yeah.
To make money on that money, I'm going to charge you to have that money. That's called an interest rate. So the higher the risk you are with bad credit score, the more I'm going to charge you.
Okay. I can definitely understand why a lot of people fear taking the next steps, because I feel it myself. And it seems to be a period right now where there's not a lot of people stepping forward to get a mortgage or committing to this process. Why is that? And what advice do you have to try and help people overcome that step?
I think different segments of the property market require different people to purchase. What we're finding, especially in shared ownership, the demand is still there, very much so, because you're not only buying a part of it, you're not buying all the property. So if you bought half this flat, for example, you take a mortgage out on half of it after your deposit, and on the other half, you'll be paying rent. That rental amount is going to be cheaper than your mortgage right now. So it's affordable. Does that make sense?
It's making sense. Yeah.
But that's shared ownership. So people are nervous right now, and they should be, because since 1650, the average rate of interest has been 5%. Then since 2008, it dropped down to around 2%, and we've had it really good for a few years. People got so used to it, now we're going back to normal, which is that 4-5% mark, and also inflation's gone up, but hopefully the rates will settle down again one day, but back to the norm. But rest assured, a bank or a lender won't be lending. If you go to the right professionals and help you get a mortgage right now, no one's going to be lending you any money unless they think you can pay it back.
Okay.
So you're relatively safe there, because the banks, if your deposit isn't big enough, your income multiples aren't there, they're not going to lend it to you. They're only going to, banks forensically look at your finances now and make sure if they're going to lend you money, it's sustainable today and into the future.
Interesting.
So you really got to look at what can I afford on a monthly basis over and above the debt.
Okay. And that seems manageable when you say it's monthly, because given we kind of seem to live like a month by month term, be that my mobile phone comes out every month, I monitor how much I spend on my car, my travel, socializing by month, you get paid by month. So that seems to be an okay way to sort of live your life. The percentage mark, when you say like 2%, 4%, it seems so tiny. Why does that have such a huge impact?
When you go from 2% to 4%, it's a 100% increase. It's not 2%.
How?
So 2% of £100,000 is £2,000.
Okay.
4% of £100,000 is £4,000. So your outgoings have gone from 2,000 to 4,000. When it comes to affordability, people used to look at homes and think, oh, that's £200,000, that's £400,000, I can't afford it. But we used to do that with cars years ago. That's £50,000, 60 is 30, I can't afford it. But then it turned into, how much is that a month? And that's how people look at homes now. They look at, how much is that going to cost me a month? The problem we had is at 2% interest rates, it was so cheap that you could buy a bigger home that you shouldn't really be living in cheaply. Now it's resetting, it's correcting, and we've gone to higher interest rates, but the same equations are there. How much is that a month? Can I afford it? Have I got this deposit? Is my job secure? Have I got that income? And that's the way I think it's here to stay now, is what can I afford monthly? Is it, but the big thing is it sustainable? Can I afford it today and in the future? And when banks lend you money and you sit with a professional advisor, sustainability of that debt is key. We have a duty to make sure it's key. And that should be taken into account. So it is scary to borrow money, it is scary to buy a house, but what are you really scared of? Are you scared of buying something that'll be cheaper next year? Don't know. Because if you think, will it be worth any less in 5 years? Probably not. Will it be worth more in 10? So if you take the long-term view, should be all right with buying a home. And then you think, what am I scared of? That I can't afford the debt? Well, you're not going to be lent it in the first place if you can't afford it.
Oh, okay, that's quite interesting. And that actually is quite encouraging advice, because I find it quite daunting as a subject otherwise. Having never had financial advice before, where do I even begin?
To begin with financial advice, the problem is back in 88, there were about 400,000 advisors. There's a lot less now and they're all getting older. So it's hard to find a financial advisor. So best place to go, find someone who's bought a home, like your parents, and ask them who they would recommend. Always go by recommendations or search for one and book an appointment to see one. They're not going to say no.
Okay.
And they won't charge you for the initial advice.
And you can even get information across social media.
Absolutely.
But do you think that this is a situation where, as human to human, it's time to have a conversation?
Yeah, I mean, you're about to spend in London, best part, £300,000 or £400,000. It warrants a proper conversation. Don't go to a computer to find out, because also, if you talk to a human, they're liable for that advice. If you go to an internet site, they're not liable for the advice. You're doing off your own volition, whereas it's better to ask for the advice. They're qualified, they're professional. Go and talk to someone and find out exactly what you can do. And you're not going to find everything out in the first conversation. You're borrowing hundreds of thousands of pounds. You're not going to find out everything in the first hour. You need to kick this around for a couple of weeks, couple of months in your own brain and work out what's good for you.
Great advice. And now, shared ownership, you've mentioned. I'm really looking forward to Shared Ownership Week to really immerse in this subject matter. So events like the London Home Show, etc., why are they so beneficial for people like me that need to learn more?
They're absolutely fantastic. About 4,000 or 5,000 people turn up. You've got all the housing associations there. You've got mortgage brokers, lawyers. You can spend a day there finding out exactly how it all works. And they're running seminars that you can go to, sit down, and someone will explain everything you need about mortgages or about the legal process. Both are very relevant. So it's a good one-stop shop of knowledge. And also you find out you're not the only person in the boat. You find out there's thousands of other people looking for homes. So it's a good day.
I work, I think, quite hard most of the time, but I'm still struggling to find the money to create a deposit. Now, what advice do you have to try and get a deposit as quickly as possible?
It's a tough one because deposits have got bigger. That's a big problem. When houses were cheaper, hundreds, tens of years ago, the deposit was smaller. So I think the fundamentals are to earn more and save, but it's not really an option for a lot of people, and that's where we find ourselves. The only other option is to look at something that's slightly cheaper to buy, or look at a government scheme like shared ownership where the deposit's a lot smaller than people realise.
I'm definitely feeling that's the route to go down, especially wanting to do this more quicker than usual. And what are the other ways that people tend to do it? So obviously borrowing money, is that okay?
Not really. If you borrow, a bank will want to know where you got your deposit from. So if you borrowed it, you're scheduled to pay it back to someone. So that's going to affect you. If someone's gifted you money, like your parents, that's a different matter.
Okay, but it's recorded down.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you borrowed it.
So basically the bank needs to know where all the money has come from.
Absolutely. They follow the money and they make sure that it's something called gifted deposits, that those people aren't going to ask you for the money back.
Understood. Okay, could we talk actual figures?
So let's say you want to buy a property like this, and for argument's sake, it's around £400,000. But you look at it and think, okay, if I had to find a 10% deposit, I'd have to put down around £40,000 and then borrow the rest. And if that's on your income multiple and you're borrowing around £360,000, you'd have to be earning nearly £80,000 to £90,000 if you use a rule of thumb of 4 to 5 times the income. If you only bought a share, you'd only be buying 25% of it and paying rent on the rest. The rental amount is going to be below 3%, about 2.5, 2.75%. And then the £100,000 borrowing, you'd have a smaller deposit and your monthly outgoing would be less. So you take into account the share you bought, the rent you pay, and the service charge, and it work out substantially cheaper than buying the whole lot outright. But today we can't go through the figures.
You're really helping me understand what shared ownership was. Now, is there a big demand for it at the moment?
We see as a firm massive amounts of demand. There's just not enough supply of it. So if you find a property like it is shared ownership, I'd hurry up, because lots of people looking at it. On average, we see, I think, Share to Buy see 35 people looking at every property. We do it down to about 20 in London, 20 people looking at buying a property. And unfortunately, not everyone can buy it.
Interesting. So the demand is high. So if you're interested, you need to start the process straight away.
Well, have a look. Firstly, find out exactly how it works, because that's always, understanding how it works is important, because you don't want any regrets later. But the majority of people, first-time buyers looking in London, can't afford to buy outright, so you need to look at some type of scheme.
Brilliant. So you've shared some really great tips so far, but what is the one golden tip that you would advise people looking into this?
Research. Research. I find people researching all sorts of things like trainers and holidays. They're brilliant. And mobile phones. People will know how to find the best mobile phone contract. It's the same element of research in finding your home and a mortgage.
Very good advice. Now, how would you define a home? What does home mean to you? Because essentially what we're talking about is spending the biggest amount of money ever on what could be the most important thing in your life.
It's funny, I've been asked that before. For me, home means safety and security. And be that made up of, secure doors and windows, or your family being with you, it doesn't matter. It makes you feel secure and safe. And that's why people want homes.
It's exactly why I'd like a home. Definitely. Well, Rupi, you've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for everything. Where would you advise people to go straight away right now if they wanted to find out more?
I think naturally you're going to look on the internet, type in shared ownership, you'll find lots of information. But there is Shared Ownership Week. Go to their website and the London Home Show website, because during September there's going to be a lot of information about shared ownership.
Brilliant. Please can you share some final advice for people like myself who are renting?
It's unfortunate people get very anxious about renting, but most of the world rent. Shouldn't be a big stigma towards it. But unless prices come down and housing becomes more affordable, I think a lot of people are in that position. However, take a look at shared ownership as a new way to rent, where you've got better security of tenure because you've also bought a slice of it as well. So you get the best of both worlds. You rent something, which should be cheaper, and you've also got the upside of that value that you've invested in going up.
When you put it like that, it sounds very reassuring, and I only wish I knew about it sooner. So thank you so much for imparting your
Pleasure.
wisdom, and thank you for listening.